Okay, hello, Dr. David Bessler. Thanks for joining us on Life Before the Virus.
Thanks, Skye, for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks. So you're the CEO of Veterinary Emergency Group. It says it right on your T-shirt. And I'm,
We're all swagged out. We've got a lot of swag.
and I'm wearing an animal print T-shirt, and I have an animal print pillow here, to be in the theme of veterinary medicine.
That's great. Very apropos.
So tell us how it's going for you. We're now coming out of the virus, and I want to hear about how your business has been impacted being a veterinarian and all the different locations that you have. And I just love to hear how it's going by you.
Sure. In the beginning, I think nobody really knew what the end was going to look like, what the impact was going to be, and there was a lot of running around, uncertainty. We were most concerned about the well-being of our people. We call them veggies, people that work at VEG or veggies. And so we were concerned about our veggies and their health, and we're also concerned about the potential for having to close down entire hospitals. We have about 9 hospitals in the New York metro area, and we were worried about having to close an entire hospital down if one person got coronavirus. And so we preemptively shut down 2 of our hospitals to create an at-home reserve backup team. In case we lost like everybody from one hospital, we could then bring an entire group in to replace them and keep that hospital running. And they were home for about 2 weeks and getting paid to stay healthy and stay at home. And then we found that our people were not getting sick at the rate that we were worried potentially they might, mostly due to us using our personal protective equipment and other not allowing our customers into our hospitals, which I'll tell you about in a second. And so people weren't getting sick that often. And so we reopened those hospitals. And since then, we've been having people getting sick here and there, but we haven't had like major outbreaks in our hospital where tons of people got sick. And what most of the veterinary industry has done, including local general practitioners and our emergency hospitals, is we haven't been allowing customers into our buildings. Instead, they've been doing this curbside service where people would pull up in their cars. We would talk to them and by phone or sometimes video conferencing, and then take their pets into the hospital. They would stay outside and treat them. What's unique about VEG is that we, unlike other veterinary experiences that people might have, I don't know if do you have any pets, or have you had any pets?
I actually, growing up, I had a pet emu, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was living on Long Island. And I don't think the local veterinarian in Syosset had ever treated an emu before.
Right. Well, at night when all the vets are closed, if you have an emergency with your emu, there's nobody else to help you. So that's what VEG does, is we'll really try to help any animal that's in need. If they can fit through our doors, we'll try to help them, just because there's no other option.
Did you find that more people were coming to you during this COVID time, maybe freaking out more because they're home with their animal and they're paying more attention to their animal? Was that a trend at all?
In some ways, yes. It's really difficult to suss out exactly who was coming in for what reason. We certainly saw a large rise in the number of calls that we get, because we get phone calls. When we have phone calls, when you call our hospitals, every medical question gets answered by a doctor, which can be really time consuming. And we found that we were just getting a lot of phone calls. Part of the reason was maybe people's general practitioners, they weren't available to answer their calls if they were closed. And I don't know if you know, like, a lot of people got pets during coronavirus.
Right.
And that might be it as well, because we noticed there were a lot of questions about puppies. And so everybody went out and got a puppy, and
right.
With zero planning, and had lots of questions about them in the middle of the night. What's nice is we're able to kind of triage those. And so if it's not an emergency, we're able to tell people they can stay at home and they don't have to worry.
So since the beginning of the virus, then, veterinary hospitals were always exempt from closing.
During coronavirus, correct. So we knew there was a lot of debate as to whether veterinary hospitals in general would be considered essential. But we knew all we do is emergency. That's our only function. And so we always knew that we would be essential, because unless you're going to tell the people of New York that, like, if your pets are dying, like, you're just out of luck. Pets are members of our family, and there's just no way that the government would do that. They'd have, there are a lot of angry people on their hands. And so we knew from the beginning that we would be considered essential. The question is whether general practitioners would be considered essential. And in the end, they are. Vaccinating for certain diseases is really important for public health. Even spaying and neutering is important to control the pet population. And then there's, treating diseases. So treating illnesses, maybe not on an emergency basis, but on a chronic ongoing basis. If you have a cat that has diabetes, it needs to get regular checkups, and that was seen as essential as well. So a lot of our general practitioners were able to stay open.
So it's emergency medicine for any type of pet, and every doctor has the similar training?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have, what we found is that we're growing fast, and we found that we also do things very differently. And so if you have a lot of experience in emergency, you may be kind of set in your ways and difficult to do things our way. So for example, everywhere else, if you have an emergency with your pet, you go in and it's very similar to when you go into like a local urgent care or a local emergency hospital. If you walk into a New York Presbyterian, you're going to fill out a clipboard front and back. You need to have your insurance card with you, etc. Then you're going to sit down. You're going to get triaged by a nurse, and then it'll be a while before you see the doctor. And then in the veterinary world, the standard is to take your pet and bring your pet into the back while you stay out in the lobby. Mm-hmm. And we don't believe in any of that. So for us, we have a holistic view, and so we think that people shouldn't be separated from their pets ever. And so when you walk in, we also don't believe in waiting times. That doesn't make sense. You're there for an emergency, and emergency and waiting don't mix.
Right.
And so when you walk into one of our hospitals, you see a doctor within seconds. You walk straight to the back to the emergency room with your pet, and you see a doctor, a technician. They all kind of descend upon you and start taking care of you right away. And then we don't separate you. So if we're doing surgery on your dog, you can stay right there by their side. So if you've been in doing emergency for a long time, this is weird for you and uncomfortable and difficult and scary. And so we find that we have great luck training our emergency doctors from scratch, taking them right out of school. We have a really intensive emergency training program that we do. We make emergency doctors out of them. And then we certainly do hire other experienced emergency doctors who display a good level of vegginess. We can hire them on, and they can learn our way into our thing.
You must have had access to PPE the whole time for your staff, and that's probably something you normally keep on hand, or how did that?
We do. We keep that on hand, and one of the first things we did was realize that our PPE is used to control infection from us to animals. When we're doing surgery, we don't spit a junior mint into the, like they did like in Seinfeld. It's just that we don't spit, and germs from our mouths don't go into our patients' open body cavities, etc. And so we can actually accomplish a lot of that with cloth masks. We realized that right away. And so one of the first things we did was we inventoried all of our masks from all of our locations around the country, and put together a task force led by one of our medical directors and one of our practice managers to then collect all of those to one central location from all of our hospitals, and then donate that. And we made a big mass donation to actually the New York Presbyterian. Wow. One of our proudest moments was for one of our veggies to show up we have these vans, veg vans, to show up in a veg van with, a pallet of masks to donate to Frontlines emergency workers, which was great.
Wow. So moving forward, will you change any of the practices at any of your locations because of this virus, or to prevent?
And we have so far, for a company that's all about keeping people and their pets together, not having people in the hospital is difficult for us. In fact, what our people did was they said, we're not used to, we don't know how to do emergency without having people around. So we actually moved our treatment area into our lobby with our big glass windows to the outside, to the parking lot. And we started just treating pets right in front of the glass so that their people can stand on the other side of the glass and see everything that's happening, so that they weren't separated visually. And then we just spoke over the phone. And so we made changes like that. We still do that. And we're trying to figure out the balance for reopening. The reopening rules, the phases really apply to local retail businesses. And it's difficult, and there's nobody out there. The New York State Veterinary Medical Society actually does a great job of trying to take government decisions which may not be focused on veterinary medicine. There's, human medicine is a much bigger thing,
Mm.
and trying to translate that into veterinary medicine. And so we're working with them to try to figure out what makes sense for an emergency veterinary hospital in order to phase ourselves back into normalcy. There are some things where, like, we're going to start, probably one of the first things we'll do is start to bring people with particular specific cases into our hospital. So for example, if you need to put your family pet to sleep, it is really gut-wrenching to not be able to be there by their side. And so probably, we'll allow them and their families into the hospital. They'll probably be the first ones. Or if we have a really critical patient where we think that there's, if there's a big risk that they may not make it, we don't want them to be separated from their owners in their last moments, and vice versa. And so we'll probably allow those pets in first. When we're going to have to work carefully to make the decision about when to do that.
And with expanding, with these different facilities you're working on expanding, are you able to hire now? Are you able to continue? Are they in the construction phase? How is that going with the progression of these facilities?
Yeah, so there was, for a minute there, we had building permits that we were waiting to go through, and just the building departments in many places were closed, and we were literally just waiting for somebody who works in the building department to check their mail and process our permit. But for the most part, they've caught up. A lot of our permits have come through in the past few weeks, and we're moving on with construction. Construction is well underway in our Denver location. We actually opened 2 locations during the pandemic. We opened our location in Fort Worth, Texas, and our location in South Tampa, both of those during the pandemic. In terms of hiring, I think a lot of veterinarians have been really moved by our meaning and our purpose. Our mission is helping people and their pets when they need it most. Like, that's the key, is we're there, like, at that critical moment, in the now, when they need help now. That's what we do. And a lot of people are moved by that. And I think that mission has become more meaningful during coronavirus, when, it's just, we're emergency workers, and coronavirus is, the pandemic is just one giant emergency.
Mm-hmm.
And so our purpose has become really, really highlighted. And I think that was really moving for people. We have a record number of veterinary students who just recently graduated. The poor kids, they graduated without an actual graduation ceremony, which is terrible for them. But we have a record number. We more than quadrupled our class of incoming new doctors who come in through that program, where we train them to be emergency doctors. So we've been hiring a lot just because our mission is really powerful.
And if someone wants to apply for a job with you, they can do that on your website?
Are you looking, Skye? If you're interested, we probably have a position for you. Yes, they can apply through our website. Our website is VEG.VET. It's VEG.VET. You can go on there and you can find a link to our hiring page.
I'll be sure to include that when I post this video with you, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This was really a treat.